Season 2. Season 2. Just kidding. It's not season 2. There's never going to be a season 2 on the 1912 podcast. It's an all season podcast, all right? But I took a break from the podcast. We went to the beautiful Kelowna, BC. I've uploaded the videos to YouTube. You can check them out here. I think that's where it's going to be. If not here, it's going to be here, but it's either one of these places. Regardless, back to the podcast. This podcast, actually, is for anyone who has a career, is not happy with it, or wants to change their career, or even doesn't know where they want to go. My guest today is Pradhiman Agarwal. Pradhiman is an educator, mentor, trainer. He's a director of an international educational institute. Fantastic guy. He's got a bunch of patents to his name. He's an engineer. He's been around the block, basically. We talk about it for an hour about a whole bunch of things, including the differences between universities, like the big ones like Harvard, Stanford, and some of the smaller universities as well, the kind of people that go there, the kind of career choices people make and how it would impact them. So it's a really interesting podcast. I quite enjoyed it because I could relate to a lot of things in terms of my career decisions as well. Nonetheless, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 1912 podcast. My name is Kane, and here we are. Pradhiman Agarwal, take it away. Thank you. Three, two, one, and we are live. Mr. Pradhiman Agarwal, it's nice to see you again. It's been a while.
Nice to see you, Ken. Thanks. Yes, nearly a year.
Nearly a year, and we'll be meeting each other soon. So that's
Yes.
pretty awesome. Yeah. So you're moving to Canada September 12th, I believe. So I'll probably see you sometime soon. But for now, I've known you for a while. But for the viewers who haven't met you yet, tell us a little bit about yourself and something that you do.
I have been into education since the last 9 years. Though that's surely not the stream I started with. I was an engineer by education, but then I just got a job into education and I just continued on and on. It's been 9 years. I primarily help students decide on their career path and then accordingly help them choose the sort of universities that would help them achieve that career and then help them with the sort of exams they would like to get into and the educational consultancy of how to apply to the schools. Because applying to the schools is a very different task than applying to schools in India.
Right.
So, I've been dealing with students across, and I started in Delhi, and then I was in Mumbai for 3 years. I was in Nepal for about 6 months, and I've been in Singapore for the last 4.5 years.
You were in Nepal as well? Oh, I didn't know that, dude.
Yeah, I was in Nepal for 6 months. Yeah, I was there during the earthquake time.
Oh, really?
And lucky to be alive because I was there for the second earthquake.
That must have been really scary. I saw the pictures and stuff. I mean, it devastated quite a bit.
It was crazy. It was 7.9 and it was, I think, about 50 to 53 seconds.
Where were you when the earthquake?
We were in office.
Oh, really? So everything was just like completely shaking and stuff. You all like had to duck under the desk and stuff.
No, not the desk, because the earthquake was of a very high intensity, and because it was the second one, the first one had already shook up things. So everyone was told not to hide under your desks, sort of a thing, because if it was the first one, it would have helped, but because of the first one, everything's already not so solid.
Right.
So everyone was asked to just run in an open area, and everyone was expecting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not that it was totally unexpected, which the first one was. I was on the second floor, and it was just a natural instinct, survival instinct. I wouldn't do that otherwise, but I was jumping like 4 to 5 steps down at once.
Yeah.
I was out of the building in 3 to 4 seconds.
And yeah, dude, you're tall as well.
Yeah.
You're almost my height, so I can imagine you jumping down 5 steps at a time.
Yeah. No, but if I were to do it consciously, maybe I would be a little hesitant that, will I get my foot right or not?
Yeah.
Right. But this was so natural, and I was like just out of the building in 3 seconds or so.
Jeez.
And then the whole office came out, and there was this open area of parking, and then everyone just naturally stuck together back to back, looking around because there were all the buildings around.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to kind of survive in the sense that, oh, if the building on your side's falling, so you shout it out and whatever. But
Oh
it was
shit,
crazy.
dude.
It
Yeah,
was
I've never
crazy.
been in a situation like that, but I don't ever want to be. Anyways, so you
After
were
50 seconds, it was crazy. Like everyone else was in a shock, and I was laughing. Like maybe I was also in a shock, but I was laughing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess it's the rush of adrenaline which you get right in that moment.
Yeah,
So you were in Nepal for like 6 months, and after that
yeah.
you went back to Delhi.
No, Nepal was the time because I was working. I was doing a lot of team building, but I
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of time in hand at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I proposed Singapore to them. So Singapore Center has been my brainchild, and I proposed that it could be a good expansion because there is no international center that Jamboree has ever before.
Right. So and this is the
So
training. This is the training institute, and you teach. You all teach GMAT, I believe.
yes,
Is there any other exams which you guys
yeah, we
teach?
teach the GMAT, the GRE, SAT,
Mm-hmm.
IELTS, and TOEFL exam.
Oh, okay. So all the
Uh,
big major ones.
yeah,
Right.
especially the ones students looking to migrate to US and
Mm-hmm.
Canada and Europe, but primarily, Jamboree, our bread and butter is GMAT.
Right. Right. And like you were an engineer, so what made you like shift like completely into 180 and go into mentoring and tutoring and stuff? Is that something that you always wanted to
No,
do?
like honestly, when I was about to finish my education, I had a list of things that I would want to be, or where I would want to be, and what kind of jobs I want to apply. And teaching or education was nowhere in the list. Like
Mhm,
I didn't even rule it out, but it was not just there on the list.
mhm.
I did mechanical engineering. I was quite excited about that, and I wanted to be a design engineer. So during our days, of course, most of my time was heavily invested in projects, and we do have a team patent on us as well. And we were like,
A team
yeah,
parent?
yeah. So we did
Okay.
participate at a national level for a auto making competition, and we have a team patent for steering, design, and suspension.
Really?
So yeah.
Dude, I didn't know you had a patent as well. You're multi-talented, man. You go into all of these different fields and you do all these random things. I never
Yeah,
knew
it
any
was
of it.
quite. So yeah, we did that, and I was surely excited to be a design engineer.
Right.
And by the time I graduated, I had three jobs. But how the system works is we graduate in May,
Mm-hmm.
and my earliest joining in the company was in December. And I was like, I don't want to pick money from home for those 5 months. So I just floated my resume. A young grad out of college, I just floated my resume on a job site, and I got a call from this institute, and they're like, we are hiring, we are looking for a maths teacher for so and so exam, and would you be interested and teach with us? And I clearly told them that I don't have a formal teaching experience, right? I think I can pull off maths, but not the teaching experience. I've done a few tuitions here and there, but no formal teaching in an
Mm-hmm.
institute and sort of stuff. And they're like, it's okay, we do a lot of training, so you can come over and write a test, and we'll take it from there. Went over, wrote the test, everything was okay. And then before hiring, I was very clear with them that I'm here for just 5 months because I'm joining so and so company in December. And they were like, okay, fair enough. Thanks for letting us know. We can plan accordingly. So we started off, and
That was very honest of you, I must say. Not many people do
yeah,
that. I wouldn't
yeah,
think.
yeah,
Anyway, sorry,
yeah.
go on.
Exactly, and very unlike an Indian company as well. Other company
Yeah.
would have simply said, no, no, for 5 months we aren't hiring you, and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
were very thankful that you let us know and we can plan accordingly.
Right.
So we started off, and I started to like to teach, and it was a never ending process. I was teaching, I was doing content development, I did a bit of teacher training, and I was like, 5 months, I'm loving this. And in November, my farewell in the company is done, everyone's saying bye. My full and final is done, and just a week before I'm supposed to actually leave, I sh- I wanted to stay. I was like, but what's the scope of growing in this company? Because this company, even though in the GMAT space, it's one of the biggest companies in Asia. Otherwise, it's not a Fortune 500 or a 100 company, right?
Right.
So, and the company I was getting into is a Fortune 100 company. And, you know, the question at that time was to be a tiny fish in a sea or to be a big fish in a small company. And
Hmm.
what are the growth prospects? So I spoke to the company management and I asked them, what are the growth prospects? And if I were to stay, so they said, we can get you into management, but you'll have to go to Mumbai. And
Hmm.
inside a week, I was in Mumbai. So yeah, I let go of my company
You just
to
like
the other
after and you
company.
left.
Yeah. Well, I kind of confirmed them on the spot. The next day, my tickets
Right.
were booked. I went home and I told my dad, I was like, I'm going to Bombay. He's like,
Hmm.
for what? Like, I'm shifting there and I'm getting the role of management. And when are you going? I'm going next week. So like, what happened to your other company? So everything was not so clear. But then I was like, okay, I'll go for it. I'll take it because I was enjoying it. So that's
Hmm.
how I stayed in. And those 5 months is now 9 years.
That's amazing, though. I mean, you found the job which you really like, right? I
Hmm.
mean, it's something
Yeah.
which you don't really find many people who have a job which they are truly passionate about. And I've said this before on one of the episodes with one of my guests earlier, that you need to be passionate about the job which you're in if you want to give your full 100%.
Yeah.
That being said, though, as someone who's very knowledgeable in in these different types of fields, really, especially in teaching and uh, career prospects as such, I know a lot of students. So where I work, I deal with a lot of students. I know a lot of students who want to get into the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, maths, business, things like that, purely because there's a perception that you get paid more if you are in this field.
Yeah.
To those people, what would you have to say to something like that if you're moving into a job just purely to get paid well?
I think there are a few more things at the background which we kind of don't see, or maybe some of these students aren't able to articulate. Um, so I've seen these things, and especially in India, it happens a lot. It's quite famous, especially with the Indian parent
Right.
syndrome, which is they want their kids to do what they want to do,
Yeah.
or what their neighbors are asking their kid to do, right? So that's a very common phenomenon in India, and I think to some extent, I won't say it's completely wrong because when kids are young and they don't have a clear direction of what they want to do, and if they don't have a clear direction of what they want to do, the parents have to step in. And the parents have to step in quite a few times. Parents don't have the clear idea as well what they should recommend. So they go for safer options. And of course, the STEM fields are surely the safer options. It's not just more about the money. I think it's more about the chance of succeeding is a lot higher.
Right.
See, if it was just about the money, become a sportsman or get into the movies, right? Of course, they
but
get
the
paid
but
a
the
lot more.
ladder but the ladder to the top and that was is a lot steeper as compared to getting into something
Yeah,
like science or technology or something,
yeah,
I would
exactly.
assume.
So I was when I was in Mumbai, I used to stay a lot of models and struggling actors, and uh, the kind of disparity in those fields is the ones at the top are earning crazy amounts of money, which we surely get
Hmm.
attracted by.
Hmm.
Everyone below earns sort of zero money
Yeah.
because they're trying to be on camera and trying to hope that one day they will be recognized and then they
Hmm.
will start to get paid.
Hmm.
So for most cases, they aren't paid anything or paid extremely less, right? So
Yeah.
it's just that 5% people who get paid, the 95% people don't even get paid,
Exactly.
right? Whereas in these fields, which are less risky fields, you'll get paid something.
Mm.
Even if you're
There's
bad
going to
at
be a
it,
consistent income at least.
yes. So even if you're bad at it or average at it, you'll get paid less, but then you'll get paid,
Mm.
right? At least to take care of your living, right? So I think one aspect of this is reducing the risk rather than the money. when it's about the money, I think people need to be more careful of because if you really want to be earning a lot, if the money is the whole crux of the story, then you really have to like it. Because if you really like it, is when you will excel in it and is when you will earn a lot more in the same field. So you have consultants which earn less, and you have consultants which earn a lot more, right? You have you have people in maths who earn less, and people in math who earn a lot more. People in IT who earn a lot less and earn a lot more, right? It's the level of interest which gets them going a lot more, right? And it's okay to not know your interest sometimes, right? And it's just the money attracting you sometimes, which is fair enough. Yes, some people do find their niche and do find their interest, that okay, I am passionate about so and so. It could be anything. It could be painting, it could be arts, it could be sports, it could be whatever, right? And if you are showing skills in that area, go ahead and take it. If you're interested in it because you like to resonate someone that you see in the television, or your friend does it really well and you're excited about it, and you feel you can also do it, but you've never participated in a competition, and you feel I have never done this sort of a thing and I don't know I'll excel or not, and if you don't have something on paper, don't go with your instincts. It's a
Right.
lot riskier,
Hmm.
right? It's going to be a lot safer if you've been interested and you've been doing, even if you're doing it at a school level,
Hmm.
right? If you've exhibited some talent towards it, right? Just fascination doesn't help. Sometimes we end up confusing fascination with passion.
That is correct.
You have to kind of separate the two,
Right.
right?
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah. So with young minds, the fascination is a lot more than the passion, and unfortunately, they can't really separate it in their heads.
Mhm. But do you think that that fascination can turn into passion somewhere down the line? I mean, think if you think about it this way, like the more you do something, the better you get at it, right? Whatever it might
You
be,
have to have
football,
you have to have there are certain aspects to
hmm
learning. There are things and there are things you can learn,
right?
right? So not everything can be learned, right? And not everything you are born with inbuilt, right? So
Hmm.
that's what I said. You should be able to show some sort of talent at whatever
Hmm.
level, right? Even if you're winning a class competition of painting, great. Okay. Your painting is heading somewhere. You have some innate skill which tells you that you at least understand colors, or maybe the structure of figures. If I draw a human face, it doesn't look like a human face, unfortunately. Right?
I can imagine it's the same with me.
Right? Now, yes, I can learn to draw a human face, and that's a skill that I can learn. But can I really see it through and make changes to it and still make people realize that it's still a human face? That's not very common. I was there in Fifi 2 years back, and they had their small street wherein they have a lot of artists painting on the road itself
Where's this?
in Fifi, Thailand.
Thailand. Okay.
Yeah, so it's very famous set of islands,
Hmm.
touristy islands, so to say.
Hmm.
And one of the very interesting talents they exhibit is, I eventually found that the whole street was doing it. But then one
Hmm.
very interesting thing was they use very random bright colors, like bright yellow, bright orange, bright blue, bright green, and all of that. I don't even know if there are specific names for these colors, but they use all those random colors and create face, or create an elephant, or create a dolphin, and they don't have outlines, and it would still look to you as a human face. It would still look to you as an elephant.
Right.
There is no outline, there is no natural color of what that animal or that face should exhibit.
Hmm.
uh, they also draw uh, a dark skinned man and a white skinned man without using any of those colors.
And you can still tell the difference.
You can still tell the difference, that this is supposed to be what a black guy would look like, or this is supposed to be what a white guy would look like.
Really? Oh, that's pretty awesome,
Really.
dude. I wonder
You can
how they
check it
do
out
it.
on the internet as well.
Yeah, I
A
should.
lot
I
of
should
pictures
check it
of that,
out.
right? Now, that's talent. Now, you can't teach that,
Hmm.
right? So, to be able to excel, you really have to have some innate sense of the skill,
Hmm.
right? The rest of it, you have the skill with learning. you sharpen the skills. You don't get one. Like
Right.
I can have a pencil, I can sharpen the pencil. If I don't have a pencil, I can't sharpen a pen.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Correct.
So I have to be very clear with that.
But that is really interesting. I never really thought about that. So in your mind, you don't feel that fascination can actually turn into passion if you don't have a talent as such which you were born with.
See, if
So
you have
like if
not
I so
explored
like
it,
so for
yeah.
me, right, let's say hypothetically I would want to get into acting, right? I may
Hmm,
be a terrible actor,
got
but
that.
I might be fascinated by it enough to go for
Hmm,
acting classes. And maybe
yep.
those acting classes might do me some good, and I might actually get realize that I can actually do some sort of acting, maybe on some level. Maybe it's not, Oscar worthy acting. Maybe I can act in an advertisement or something like that. But it is
Yeah.
acting on some way, shape, or form. So would you say that in that way, like your fascination can translate into a passion, or does that in your eyes not happen at all?
So there are areas sometimes, we are fascinated by it, and, we do see, oh, this person was not doing this before and suddenly he became successful. And we do have a lot
Hmm.
of stories around that as well.
Hmm.
And one aspect to this is that, sometimes these people who are fascinated by it or didn't do this ever before and were really successful by it is that they had never tried it before,
Right.
right? They always had that pencil, they never knew that, right? So it's absolutely possible that you don't have that. And one very interesting aspect of US education system, US means the North America education system, is
Hmm.
a lot of students do take a gap year after their 12th year of education,
Yeah, I
right?
noticed that.
And that's a very good thing, and that's the time to really experiment with these things.
Mm.
That 1 year you pick out all the things you're fascinated by and do all those classes. Like if you have the money, do a class for acting, do a class for painting, do a class for Java coding, do a class for finance, do a class for whatever you
Hmm.
feel that you would be interested in.
Hmm.
And then you'll start to see, are you really getting interested in it or not?
Hmm.
Right. Now you can always say, I have never acted, but I would like to see if my acting skills are worth it. Right. You go for the acting school, right? You try it out for 3 months, 6 months. If you're liking it, if you're enjoying it, you're getting some praise from the outside world, you're getting the confidence in, great, continue. You're
Hmm.
like, okay, everyone's saying I'm a bad actor. I feel I'm a bad actor. My teacher feels I'm a bad actor. I I have a sense of, what a good acting is,
Right.
and you are still like, no, no, I will become a good actor one fine day. You are lying to yourself,
Right. Right.
right? So there are things surely we have not experimented with. So
Hmm.
that 1 year gives us the year for experimenting, and you
Mm.
should surely use that.
I agree. I agree. I see a lot of these students over here taking a gap year. So when you were talking about acting, have you ever seen this movie called The Room?
No.
It's supposed to be the world's worst movie ever made.
Okay.
So I mean,
I would
it's a
have surely
horrible.
missed it then.
It's a really bad movie, but it's so bad that it's actually good. And
Okay.
the guy who made this movie, his name is Tommy Wiseau. And anyway, so I won't get into the story because it's just nonsense. The story is absolute nonsense of that movie, but it became like a cult hit. So because it was so bad, like these smaller theater chains, they would play this movie in the theaters like during after hours, like 10:30, 11. And it would have a ton of people who would just go for this movie to laugh at it. And it became such a huge phenomena that there was a James Franco movie which was made after it. It was called The Disaster Artist. It came out a few years ago,
Okay.
about 2 or 3 years ago. And basically that movie made The Room, the original movie, much more famous than what it was. And now this guy, the original guy who made The Room, who's a terrible actor, so he directed, he wrote, he did the screenplay, he did the visual photography, everything was done by him and him alone. He became like ultra famous, and like right now he's selling merchandise from The Room and stuff. So I guess, even if you don't have a talent and if you're really that bad at it,
Hmm.
and if you have, I would say, and if you have a good sense of humor that you can laugh at yourself, or
Yeah.
you can stand people laughing at you, or realizing, that you can't really do anything. I still think that there's a way you can make money out of it, just purely from this guy. But but I guess that's few and far between. Like you really have to be that bad. So it's either like you're on one end of the spectrum where you're really good at what you do, or you're
Yeah.
really bad at what you do, and both ways you get famous for for the two entirely different things. But check out that
Yeah.
movie, dude. It's an awesome movie. It's not
Got
an
it.
awesome movie. It's a bad movie, but it's really funny to watch. Like I made Nikki watch it like some time ago, and she was just like, I can't believe this got made. It's a too
Wow.
the movie's too funny. Yeah, but anyway, so
Love
back
that.
to the topic. What I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you was on the flip side though, for someone who doesn't have a passion, who
Hmm.
doesn't know what they want to do in life
Yeah.
or for a career, what advice would you give someone like that?
I think one part of it is what I've already said. They should take the gap year, experiment with a few things, and then see what they like. Right. Because
Right.
quite a few times we are busy with life and we are busy with schoolwork and we're busy with whatever stuff. We just don't get that time to experiment. Right. So I
Mm.
think it's a good time to experiment. Take that year, experiment. The other thing is there are a lot of exams. I'm not sure you are aware of, but there are quite a few exams which are getting famous. These are psychology exams, and you bring your kid, your parents bring their kid, they ask them to write a test, and after the test, a counselor sits with them and tells them their areas of interest or their areas of talent,
Right.
and these are natural areas of talent, which is not
Is this
uh,
like a personality test of some sort?
sort of, yes.
Okay.
Like personality test is surely towards personality, how you
Right.
behave among social beings,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's towards what your inclination is in terms of subjects or studies that you'd like to go further for,
Mm-hmm.
right? And could be studies of any sort, like painting to football to
Right.
engineering to whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But these exams sort of highlight the areas that you're sort of more interested in than the
Mm-hmm.
others.
What is this
So
exam? What is this exam called? Do you know?
Uh, it's not at the top of my head, but maybe I can search it and
Yeah, yeah.
share that with you later
No
on.
problem. No problem.
And interesting, there are a lot of other companies which have come up with these exams, but I think a safer bet would be go with the most known one. Right,
Mm-hmm. Of course.
right. Maybe I can share it with you, and you can put it in the credits later.
Yeah, yeah. No problem.
Yeah,
I'll do that.
but yeah, these exams are there, but you don't have clear credibility of these exams that they are absolutely true or not true. Surely there is gray area.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not one thing or the other. Do both, and third, surely listen to
Mm-hmm.
your parents and seek
Mm-hmm.
advice. Parents, extended family, and if you're like, okay, I think I'm interested in painting, reach out to the uncle who paints. Okay, I think I'm interested in engineering. Reach out to the uncle or the aunt who's in engineering. Speak with them, understand what they do on a daily basis. It could seem fascinating from the outside, but maybe what they're actually doing is not so interesting anymore,
Right.
right? I was a kid, I used to see these buildings being made or these machines being made. I was very fascinated by machines all the time. But when you really get to the crux of it, yes, I got my hands dirty and we made that car and everything. But that's not what every engineer does. We were just handful of engineers who did this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of my batchmates are still doing procurement. They're sitting at a desk, they buy stuff what the engineering department
Yeah.
asks them. That's not engineering, right? You don't have to be a graduate in BTech in mechanical engineering to buy something from a vendor to make it available for the rest of the department. That's what a lot of people do,
Yeah.
right? You should really know if you're excited about engineering, what inside engineering, right? If you're excited about math, what is about math? You want to learn math, you want to teach math, you want to research about math, what do you want to do, right? You paint. Now what sort of painting? There are millions of sorts of or styles of painting, and people on YouTube still create new styles, or music or sports or dance or whatever. I think it's important. The third aspect would be to go and speak with people, right? And surely go out to parents, uncles, aunts, neighbors, whosoever you can get first-hand information, right? Reading up on the internet is good, but that's not enough, right? That should be your last resort. A lot of people actually don't want to go and speak with people because they want to hide their vulnerability, and they would rather read stuff online in their own corner in their own bedroom. It's okay, do read up, but after reading up, create questions.
Right.
So from reading on the internet, figure out your questions, and based on the questions, take those questions to your uncles, take those questions to aunts, to your friends parents, your parents, and anyone and everyone you can speak with,
Mm,
right?
mm. Makes
You can
sense.
start this activity in your 11th or 12th year of education, or if you're like really busy, then you can surely do it
Right.
after your 12th year of education, but
And
you'll have to
what
do all.
about for someone like, so I know personally, I know a lot of people. So I'm 31 years old. I know a lot of people who are close to my age or even my age who still don't know what they exactly want to do in life. Now,
Hmm.
you would think for someone who's like above the age of 25 that they have like a fair idea as to what they want to do in life. But a lot of people I know don't exactly have that really charted out and planned, it, like some other people really. For them, really, I'm sure it would be slightly different because they can't really take a gap year from work.
Hmm.
So, what advice would you have for them?
Okay. So, I surely deal with a lot of these students. I surely deal with a lot of
Hmm.
students in the age group of 25 to 33. And,
Hmm.
these are the people wanting to do an MBA or a master's in a technical field. And they are like, I want to do an MBA. So I want to write a GMAT. And I said, okay, why do you want to do an MBA? And there is a pause. And after the pause, they come up with an answer. And you know you get to know by the tone of the person that the person's clear in their head or is just sort of frustrated with their current job,
Right.
or feels like they've hit the glass ceiling. So those could be different reasons why they are looking forward for these changes, right, or for
Hmm.
their education. So a lot of times these people are not looking for further education, they are looking forward for some change in life,
Hmm.
because maybe they got into this field by chance or by interest at that point in time. And
Hmm. Interest
32,
change
33,
ultimately. Yeah.
yeah, 32, 33 happens to be the a very beautiful year in the sense. So 32 to 35 is one of the most interesting set of years in
Why do
a
you say that,
person's
dude? I'm
life.
gonna be 32 next year.
Yeah, I'll give you certain numbers. So the midlife crisis happens in this age group.
No, really?
That
I always thought it was
Yeah,
gonna be like 40, 45 around that time.
no. So the midlife crisis starts here,
Yeah.
right? It maybe goes to a peak at 40 or whatever, but it starts in this. Uh, 33 happens to be the year for depression. The people with
Thanks for warning
depression,
me.
the average age of people depressed is 33, and that's also, I feel, somewhere linked to the midlife crisis, because they don't know where they are headed.
Mhm.
They know they are heading and they are succeeding and whatever, but quite a few times they don't know if they're headed in this direction, are they in the right direction or not.
Mhm.
This also happens to be the year for divorce, so average highest years of divorce, the person's 20, 32 or 33.
Knock on wood, and
So
that doesn't happen.
yeah, so I've kind of, I think I've passed that number. So I think, even though I'm not married or in a
Right.
relationship, I think I I I've successfully avoided divorce.
That's one way to put it.
That's one way to put it, right? I've successfully avoided divorce, right?
Yeah.
So the midlife crisis starts from the aspect of, a lot of times, something that you had mentioned a lot earlier was, people get into the STEM programs, and I said some people also do it because their parents ask them to do it, right? So they get
Hmm.
into these fields, and because they're competitive and they're talented, they do succeed. They succeed for 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, and it varies from person to person.
Hmm.
And then at a point they kind of stop. They're like, why am I doing this? Or even if I'm doing this, I've hit a glass ceiling, what next? And quite a few times, the other thing is, some people who are really successful and who lack sense of direction, there is very interesting aspect I've seen is they can succeed in whatever they want to do and they end up getting two or three great opportunities. The problem is they don't know which one to choose.
Mm.
So that's another big reason why they're like, should I do an MBA now, or I got a promotion waiting for me next year, and should I wait for the promotion and then go for an MBA, or I'm expected to have a family and new members in life, and I would have more responsibilities. So should I delay my stuff or should I do it now? So there are all sorts of people, right?
Mm.
And surely the advice varies with respect to what they want to do. One of the aspects is surely they are looking for money. When they are going for MBA, they are surely attracted by money. That's surely one of the big areas. And surely they are sometimes looking for a break. People, especially with 31, 32, 33 years of experience, they're surely looking for break in most cases. And that break comes in form of an MBA, right?
Right.
And I think that's the reason why I am doing this MBA, right?
Mm-hmm.
I am doing this MBA because I want a break, because in my organization I think I've maxed out, right? And what's next for me is I want to take that gap year, which is my MBA,
Mm-hmm.
right? But a lot of people I see, they are usually debating between I'm frustrated with my job
Mm-hmm.
and I want some way to get out of it, right? But because I've spent so many years, it's not easy to have my skills transferable into something else, and hence I want to do an MBA,
Mm.
or at least hence I feel I want to do an MBA, right? So the
I get
very
what you mean.
interesting number is, of all the people who join any institute in the world, only 25% people end up writing the exam.
Oh, really?
Yes, so 75% people don't even write the exam. They go off the track in phases. They're like, oh, they get overly busy with life, or they find reasons not to do homework and
Mm-hmm.
not to excel, or maybe they just joined this because their friend was joining in, and
Right.
they're like, okay, I will also try it out. So in the end, there's just 25% people who write the exam, and of
Mm-hmm.
those, only half the people go for these higher education eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of numbers, surely there is a lot of number crunching here, but most people who really get into these fields and who really go for an MBA and have some sort of heading, they're kind of clear to begin with what they want to do after the MBA. So one of the things how you should decide is decide what you want to do first. You should have some goal. Based on the goal, you decide the universities, and based on that, you start doing your prep for whatever exam you
Correct.
want to do.
Correct.
Right. A lot of people, unfortunately, do it the other way around. They're like, okay, we'll write the exam, and based on the score, we'll see what universities we can get into, and based on the university will decide our career.
Correct.
Right. That's not the best. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So people who have a goal and people who even have an average goal, they end up succeeding,
Mm-hmm.
rather than people who think they want to get into one of the top schools, and because they don't have a goal, they end up going nowhere.
There's one more thing I wanted to ask you though. Like in terms of the top schools, like there, like so for example, like Harvard. Like we were talking before this, we're talking about like Harvard and stuff. When you take a university like Harvard, which is or Stanford even, like which is like way up over there, like in space, and then you have
Yeah.
another university which is also really good, like UBC sort of School of Business, or University of Victoria, or University of Alberta, University of Toronto, one
Yeah.
of those, so comparatively, like if I had to get an education at one of these schools versus like let's say a Harvard, does that really influence my career in the future, or is it such that it doesn't matter where I go as long as I'm getting the degree in hand?
uh, it surely is a mix of two. Surely one aspect is talent
Mm-hmm.
and skills. You can't take that away, right? We have seen people graduating from average schools and being there on the top, and people never graduating also being there on the top, right?
Like Steve Jobs, for example.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So you have those sorts of people, right? But of course, we are not in that world anymore, unfortunately. So we are in the world of wherein you should have it in a certificate or a degree format, someone who accredits you for your skills. You can have those skills, but if you don't have a stamp on the CV, most likely you aren't getting an interview.
Right.
So surely in the modern world, it's more and more important to have a degree. But
Mm-hmm.
the to answer your main question, which is the top schools versus the good schools,
Mm-hmm.
right? And one aspect is surely the cost that is involved. Like if I were to
Mm-hmm.
go to a Stanford or a Harvard, my MBA fees plus living expenses and all the exchange programs I'm going to do is going to be $200,000 and above,
Easily.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, even if I'm doing it properly, $200,000 for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And versus, like one of the good schools in the US itself would, with the scholarship, most of the tier two schools give scholarships if you're a decent candidate. You'll end up spending about anywhere from 60 to $80,000,
Correct.
right? That's a huge gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of difference in terms of the kind of money I'm spending, and one of the sure important criteria we look at is returns on investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere it is diluted. The problem is returns on investment. We only see it in terms of money and the foreseeable future, right? Which
Correct.
is usually 3 to 5 years post MBA.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking at that, surely the cheaper schools make a lot more sense than the ones Stanfords, Harvards, and Whartons,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the long-term returns are a lot more higher of these Stanford, Harvard, Wharton, because they are stamps for lifetime, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you actually kind of see a separation. So they're kind of going together till a point about 3 years, 4 years in
Mm-hmm.
most cases. Of course, there
Mm-hmm.
are other people, but in most cases they are going together. But then they start to separate, and these people continue to grow at the same rate from the tier two schools or even tier one schools. But these ones, the Stanford, Howard, Wharton people, they now start to accelerate. So you see these people growing exponentially fast and
Right.
to the senior most positions on the planet,
Mm.
not in a country, senior most positions on the planet in 10 to 20 years of time. So that's when you start to see the returns on investment of a Stanford, Harvard, Wharton.
I'm sure some of that is influenced surely by the university that they are in, but also it could be the talents of the individual as well.
Yes, yes,
Hmm.
yes. You can't take that away.
Right.
That's there for sure. Now that's
Hmm.
what I started with. Now this is excluding that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
People assuming two people with the same level of talent and same skills getting into the same
Hmm.
program, one school versus the other. That's what
Hmm.
the difference is.
Right.
Surely people with a lot more talent, people with a lot more inclination, people with a lot more clarity of goal.
Hmm.
Like I said, the importance of goal is very important.
Hmm.
We can't just let go of that. A lot of people get into the good schools and they don't have clarity of goal, and they end up being nowhere.
But
The problem is,
sorry, continue.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
What I really wonder is that what makes Harvard Harvard? Like, is it the teaching style? Is it the backgrounds of the teachers involved? Is it the kind of students that they get there? Because I know one person who's graduated from Harvard, like
Hmm.
just one person, and this guy
Yeah.
was in my school when I was really young, and he was a smart guy back then as well. Uh, in school, when I say school, I mean between first to 10th grade. He was a
Yeah.
smart guy. I wouldn't say incredibly, smart as such, but he was a decently smart guy, would stand in the top five in class. So he graduated from Harvard. And right now he's in a successful career. I think he's in consulting or something like that at this
Hmm.
point in time.
Yeah.
Basically, what is it about Harvard or Stanford that makes it stand out from the rest, other than the perceived notion that these schools have the top tier of education?
Yeah. I think there are a few aspects, not just one
Mm-hmm.
or the other. It's a combination of one, a huge brand name that they've built over years.
Mm-hmm.
So, because the kind of brand name they've built over the years, there are a lot of interested companies or investors who would be
Mm-hmm.
willing to invest in these people or in their ideas just because of the sheer brand name they've built for themselves, right?
Right.
And it's not happened last year or the last year or the last year. It's happened over hundreds of years, right? So, you kind of, if I would invest my $100,000 with someone, it would be a safer bet to go with the idea of a Harvard grad
Yeah,
versus
I
a
guess so.
SFU grad, right?
Right.
So
It's just like how
it
you
would
say
be,
Toyota is a reliable car. They even if
yeah,
yeah, I get what you're saying.
right. So it's
Hmm.
a notion that they have developed over a period of years. So it's
Hmm.
you are more likely to get an investment, or you're more likely to get a senior job. That's
Hmm.
one. I think it's more toward the investment than the job. To the job, it's kind of the same. The second aspect is because they are such top universities, the competition of getting in is very high, and the people who are eventually shortlisted are the smartest brains of the planet already.
Hmm.
So you are spending about 2 years of your life with the smartest brains, and the brain kind of excels in the level of competition you put in,
Hmm.
right? So you are having a chilled out life and you are having no competition whatsoever. We are chilled as well, right? You put them into some sort of stress or uh, difficult situations, or in situations with smarter people, you're going to surely do a lot better. And when you're competing with the smartest people on the planet, then of course the competition is very, very high. The kind of learnings you get is very, very different. The opinions you get, because all these people have their upbringing to bring to the classroom. It's not
Right.
just years of education, right? Because the shortlisting criteria is not education. The shortlisting criteria for these schools is a holistic approach. So the candidate must be whole and complete in all areas of life.
Hmm.
So when you're looking at that, you're looking at extremely talented people and multi-talented people. So the second aspect would be the kind of competition of the people you are dealing with across 2 years, right? And people in your class and the kind of opportunities you get within the program, right? Those are surely the top notch as well. You get your presidents to speak in these classrooms as guest lectures. Bill Gates would come and deliver a guest
Yeah.
lecture, right? So those people don't go to every university, right? You don't get to
Hmm.
interact with them, or you don't get to hear their thoughts unless YouTube, right?
Hmm.
I think the third aspect here would be surely the kind of education that they really provide. Harvard is
Hmm.
known to produce the maximum and the most sought out case studies.
Right.
Almost all schools use case studies of Harvard or IESE Business School. So these are the two biggest schools producing the case studies.
Hmm.
So these schools also have a very sought out academic approach. They have a lot of Nobel laureates, they have the smartest teachers, they have a lot of research going on, and a lot of case studies that happen. So it's also the kind of education provided inside these programs, right?
Hmm.
You can have one Nobel laureate in so and so school, but then he's not teaching everyone, right? In
Right.
most cases, he's teaching no one,
Hmm.
right? He's just happy doing research, right? But these schools, you surely have a lot more chance of interacting with these people. You get into some really good research programs and
Hmm.
become a RA, and you get to do a lot more uh, activities. Seriously, the quality is also higher, right?
Hmm.
In terms of jobs, when you say, okay, I am a consultant right out of Harvard versus I'm a consultant right out of University of Toronto, maybe to begin with, your salaries will be in a similar range.
Hmm.
If you're about the same age group, same talent, same similar years of experience, background, it's going to be about the same.
Hmm.
But then 10 years down the line, maybe you'll become a manager or a senior manager or maybe even a partner. But all of that totally depends on the skill set and the talent we were talking about.
Right. Right.
Right? If you have
And
the talent, yes, you can graduate from any school and be there.
I'm sure in the 9 years which you've been in this business, you must have met some people who've gotten into Harvard or Stanford.
Oh,
So,
yes.
so would you say that these individuals who you've met, really stand out in comparison to the number of other individuals you would have met?
Drastically different. Their whole
Right.
thought process is very different. Now,
Mm-hmm.
they see the same things from a very different eye.
Mm-hmm.
In most cases, the shortlisting criteria of the schools is also they are looking for world leaders. They are not looking for people searching for jobs, right?
Right.
They are looking for leaders. And that's why they end up being in places. So when they're looking at a certain aspect, they're looking at from a very, very different perspective, that 1% perspective, which is unique to them, and it surely gets further sharpened in these schools. So I know a guy from a Harvard school. I'll avoid the name for now, but he's a good friend, and he did his engineering from Punjab, and then he went to Stanford for master's in engineering, and then after that he went for an MBA from Harvard. Right?
Oh, wow. So he's been he's been to the big ones
He's
and the
been
big ones. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
been to both the big ones. But then when
Mm-hmm.
he started in bachelor's, he was in a decent school in India. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Not, he's not coming from one of the IITs, which is the most well-known sought-out college in India.
Right.
Right? But during his time there, he did a project and he proposed it to the state government, and they implemented it in the whole state
Oh, really?
while he was doing his engineering, bachelor's of engineering. Right? Now that's a very interesting aspect. Now he's an extremely talented individual. Even though
Mm-hmm.
he's not in one of the top schools, he's an extremely talented individual. He
Mm-hmm.
ends up he works for a few years, he ends up getting into Stanford. He graduates from there, works in a few places for a year or two, and then ends up going for an MBA in Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
He was Last time I knew, he was working with SoftBank as one of the senior people who look into investments in India in the energy sector. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of the decision maker of, there is this new energy program and should we invest or not. Right. That's the kind of role he was in. And on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, he was expected to fly to Japan and have meetings with the presidents of SoftBank and the president of Japan.
Really?
Because, yes.
Wow.
And
Big man.
you don't get into those positions otherwise, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
On a monthly basis, meeting with the prime minister, president of Japan. I'm not sure who's the governing body there. It
Yeah.
varies from country to country, but then
Mm-hmm.
whosoever. But the government is highly invested with the SoftBank in Japan, because
Mm-hmm.
SoftBank kinds of is the biggest thing that gets them the money, right? So they're highly invested. So he used to have these monthly meetings. The level of interaction is different. It's worlds apart. You and I can't believe that, right? We can't even get into those situations. We don't even know, if I were to get into a meeting like that, I would get cold feet. I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
even know what to talk.
Yeah, yeah.
This guy does this on a regular basis, and surely I don't know how much he was earning, but he was surely earning a lot, and yet down to earth. Now I can have a one-to-one conversation with him.
Mm-hmm.
He won't he would never make you feel that, oh, you're not even a master's, don't even talk to me. Your annual salary, maybe my weekly salary. you know they don't come across like that, right?
Yeah,
They are
yeah.
leaders, and leaders are meant to be approachable. Even though he's a
Mm-hmm.
friend, and he he could surely not talk to me now. He can simply say, hey, I'm busy, right? Or he can
Mm-hmm.
just ignore my message, right? But he happily replies, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
message to him as well. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty interesting that way. So one aspect is surely the human behavior, right? The other aspect is, despite all the success he had, he quit his job.
Really?
He's not much older. He's just 35.
Wow.
Doing all of this, he's just 35. He quit his
Wait a
job
minute. So
at
he's 35 at this point in time. Like,
at this point in time, maybe 36, but yeah.
so when he actually got into this job, he must have been what, 31, 30, maybe younger?
Yeah,
Jeez, man, that is something. Like, you must be like Elon Musk level of intelligence.
exactly. So,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of students really get into these programs are these
Right.
kind of people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
because you get to interact with these people a lot
Mm-hmm.
more often on a daily basis, you're hanging out
Mm-hmm.
with them,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of understand a lot more things
Their
than
wavelength.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And the experiences, right? Now, if
Mm-hmm.
my father is a big shot, and he goes around sitting with the bureaucrats, and he takes me along sometimes. I listen,
Mm-hmm.
right? I know how to behave in
Mm-hmm.
a tea party there, right?
Right.
But if not, then I would have no idea, what kind of jokes they crack, how do they
Mm-hmm.
smile, how would they behave, right? How would they talk? Do they
Mm-hmm.
talk casually? Do they talk passively aggressively? Are they really smart? Do they come across humble? There are so many aspects of human life, but you get that a lot more exposure in these schools. And despite that sort of a job he was having, he quit that. And he's like, I'm working on a few ideas. And I was like, okay, surely, you're a Harvard grad, but what kind of ideas? Why would you let go of such a stable job with so much
Maybe he's
money,
making
right?
flying cars or something.
Yeah, maybe in another 5 years you can just retire and do nothing, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and still be a millionaire maybe. But
Mm-hmm.
he's like, I've resigned, and now I have opened my own venture capitalist firm, and I've gotten so many millions of dollars from investors to invest into businesses.
Wow.
So he's opened up his own VC for energy,
Amazing.
which you wouldn't get a regular guy doing that, right? And the regular
Yeah.
guy, would be like, what are the safer options? What are the safer things I can do?
Mm-hmm.
And getting into the STEM programs, they're gonna pay us
Mm-hmm.
more. The pay us more is what? The pay us more is what? 60,000, 80,000, 70,000,
Yeah, yeah.
right? What you're talking about with these programs is different, right? You're talking about millions. And you're talking about ideas, you're talking about the kind of contacts and the network you get, right? I'd like to get to the fourth aspect of the top business schools, the Stanford, Harvard, Whartons, the
Mm-hmm.
kind of alumni network you get.
Oh, I'm
You
sure
can't
that
just
is
go and
beneficial.
that's impossible to get. They won't entertain your idea otherwise.
Mm.
If you're a Harvard alum already and then you reach out to them, I have so and so idea, why don't we catch up for coffee? He'll try to catch up for coffee. If you're like, I am from so and so place and I feel I have a good idea, right? Maybe he won't make time,
Mm.
right? So the kind of network you get is crazy as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. The networking, especially over here in North America, is huge.
Yeah,
Absolutely huge. Like for most people who want to get jobs or want to get something done in terms of a career or business, it's always done through networking. Always.
yeah,
9 out of 10 times. All my jobs
yeah.
so far that I've had in Canada have all been through networking as well. And this is
Well,
just someone like me, an average guy. So yeah.
yeah. But nowhere in the sense, I would like to add here that in no sense, I am saying that it's better to get into the top schools and not so good to get into the other schools.
Mm.
I would surely say identify your goal. If you want to be a world leader, great. If you want to be an average guy, retire by the age of 50, 55, naturally retire, enjoy your family life, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Get into one of the other schools, identify what your goal is.
Mm-hmm.
Your goal matters a lot, right? Not everyone wants to be leader, right? Because when you are there, maybe you're compromising your personal life, right? So I think it's very important to identify what your personal goal is, what are your interests, and based on that you step forward.
What I was also wondering before I let you go,
Yeah,
there must be so like I know a few people who would prefer to get into, let's say, Harvard or Stanford, but it's way out of their reach because clearly it's a very competitive environment.
yeah.
Now, to be in one of those universities, you have to be the cream of the crop. You have to be super highly intelligent. Are there any tests or exercises as such that, or that you know of, that one can do to let's say to increase their IQ or intelligence level as such, or is it just that you're born with it and that's the way it is?
uh, it's not just born with it and just the way it is. I think it's also to do with how your education system worked,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I have taught students from nearly more than 20 countries by now.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of now understand how an Indian brain works because the kind of curriculum they follow, I followed the
Mm-hmm.
same. I do understand people from Singapore, how their curriculum works, and how they are trained to think of the same question, and how people from the rest of Southeast Asia, and then people from Europe, and I've had students from Canada and US as well.
Mm-hmm.
So people think very differently. It's not just based on the innate skills; it's also their whole upbringing and the whole
Mm-hmm.
upbringing, years of
Mm-hmm.
education that they had.
Mm-hmm.
One of the areas, or one of the ways to really see you are on track or not is, you can get into certain psychological programs.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to understand how you understand. Might be a bit of mouthful, but yeah, it's important to understand how you
How
understand.
you
And you
understand.
have to be
Basically, how you
you have to be
perceive things.
yes, you have to be
Right.
mindful of that. And a lot of times we
Mm-hmm.
perceive things and we kind of treat them as true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, no theory or no understanding is true. You have to just be conscious of your theory is what style of theory. Now,
Mm-hmm.
don't call it's closer to the truth or away from the truth and whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your perception of truth and my perception of truth would be very different,
It's very
right?
relative.
Right. But if we are arguing about it, surely we are not conscious about it. But if we are more mindful of understanding each other's thought process or each other's story of truth,
Mm-hmm.
is when you are being more mindful, is when you are being more attentive to your thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
right? In terms of learning, GMAT is a great examination. It's not only, a lot of people take it from a perspective of as an entrance test to get into one of the top schools.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been teaching this for over 9 years, and I know there are students who get a 680 and stay at 680, never move.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people who are at a 600, go to a 750 inside 2 months,
Really?
right? Yes. Now, these are the people, people who really get to this are the ones who are willing to understand the thought process and who are willing to not characterize their version of truth as the correct version of truth.
Right. So it's basically they put their own biases aside to understand something different. Okay, I get what you're saying.
Yes. So GMAT is not an entrance exam through math or English. They are
Mm-hmm.
not testing math and English. Through math and English, they are testing a person's psyche. This is a psychometric test.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very, very important to understand that it's a psychometric test, not a test of math and English. I can give you all the formula. You can have an open book test and still not get anywhere, right? So in terms of learning, I think GMAT is more to help you gauge where you are, but in terms of learning, is the whole process you go through,
Right.
right? But I think on a regular basis, on a daily basis, just your daily interactions of how you're presenting an argument and how you're receiving an argument, being mindful of what you used, even small aspects. Hey, I should get married. Why should I get married?
Mm.
Can you strengthen this argument? Can you weaken this argument? Can you give me assumptions around this argument?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can always strengthen this. No, this is the right age to get married. People usually get married in the age group of this and this, so you should get married. You can
Right.
present an argument saying, by the time you'll have your family and your kid grows to a certain level of starting to earn, you would be in the age to retire. If you delay it any further, then it's going to be difficult in terms of
Mm-hmm.
finances, right? Or you need someone to take care of your parents, the grandparents, so to say, right? You can have multiple reasons why you should do it, right? Now, if you're saying these things, you should understand that these are all opinions that you're presenting, not facts, not uh, not a matter of life and death, right? So they are not black and white. So till the time it's not black and white, everything in the middle is an opinion,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have to be mindful. And if you're like, okay, cool, let's understand that these are not truths. So a lot of people consider them as truth. But another person would, if you are able to see that they are not truth, it's just a generally accepted opinion,
Got it.
then you are in a better position.
Makes
Right.
sense.
Now,
Makes sense.
if you're changing your thought process that way to any argument, of course, this was a very random argument that I'm dealing with these days, but then yeah,
Sweet. That's okay, dude.
but then yeah, it's important that we understand the difference between the truth and the idea of truth. So if
Right.
you're
Because
getting more mindful of that,
everyone has their own perception of what the truth is, but it's just really the way your experiences have wired you to think, as
Yes.
opposed to you thinking objectively. It's more subjective as opposed to objective, I would say.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because I know for a fact that uh, you know it's hard for someone to, we look at a college or university like some like Harvard or Stanford and be like, that's quite unattainable for me because I'm clearly not on that sort of intelligence level. But
Hmm.
at the same time, I would like to be at that intelligence level, right? So for
Yeah.
someone, it's hard to understand what can we do to really get to that particular intelligence level. So, right,
Hmm.
that's all I
Yeah.
wanted to know.
Unfortunately, you know, it's not so easy.
Hmm.
It's the talent, it's the whole upbringing, it's the school you
Right.
went to, it's the people you interacted with.
Hmm. And it's also probably what you
It's
were born with, your innate,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
your biology of your body, I would assume as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Everything.
Cool, awesome. Well, I won't keep
Yes.
you much longer. It's been a
Hmm.
little more than an hour, so I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Uh,
Thank you so much for having me on this.
oh, it's my pleasure. It's my
It's kind
pleasure.
of my first experience on the podcast, right? I've had interviews, but not a podcast.
Yeah,
This is more interactive and fun.
yeah. I prefer that instead of it being just like a series of interview-like questions, really. But thank you.
Yeah.
You gave me a lot of good insight, and I'm sure like the viewers who watch this will have had good insight by the end of this video itself. So thank you for that. Do you have any contact information that I can leave in this video if someone wants to reach out to you for mentorship opportunities as such?
Oh, sure. So I have my email ID, pradumanagarwal08 @gmail.com. So I can
Right.
spell that out.
Mhm.
PRADUMAN AGGARWAL 08 @gmail.com. So
I'll
surely feel
also
free
link
to.
it down. I'll also link it
Yeah,
down. So
yeah.
uh, someone can reach
Absolutely.
out to you if they have any questions as such. Any other contact information as such, or that's it?
For now, we'll keep it to the email,
Cool.
right? We can take it
No
from
phone
there.
number yet. No
No
phone
phone
number yet.
number yet,
No
because
Instagram yet.
I maybe I can share my Canadian number once I'm there in
No.
about two
It's okay.
weeks.
No, it's okay. I'm not that famous anyways. It doesn't matter. I doubt anyone's gonna really, reach
No,
out.
you are on the
But
path
if
to be famous.
Oh, thank you, man. I like how you have faith in me. But yeah, it's enjoyable to have these discussions, and for someone of your caliber and your level of passion and understanding of careers and education, I found this particularly insightful. I think the viewers would definitely find this insightful as well. So once again, thank you so much for coming on. And as always, you're more than welcome to come on the show anytime. Maybe now you're going to be in Canada, so you can come on and we can hang out side by side and talk as well. That would be awesome. That way I can
That
get a
would be
better
great.
video quality as well because I won't be shooting from my stupid webcam. All right. Cool.
Got that.
Awesome, man.
Sure.
All right.
Perfect.
All right.
Thanks a lot for having me.
It's my
It was
pleasure.
great chatting up.
All right. Take care. All right.
Take care. Thanks.
All right. Yeah. Bye.